They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Program to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are mourn, just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Tonight, I am exceptionally honored and excited to have a guest on Rogueways who has truly lived and created in alignment with a spiritual dimension beyond the ken of materialist science and helped science to come along and finally get with the program. She has traveled far and wide, immersing in various indigenous and shamanic traditions, and has practiced mediumship, psychic interpretation, remote viewing, paranormal and psychic phenomena, and more, has written and contributed to many publications and studies, and even runs her own podcast as well, or will soon. A woman I already feel a kinship with. Welcome to Rogueways, Gail Hayssen. Gail, how are you doing tonight?
Well, I'm so happy to be here. It's very hot up here in Northern California. And I spent my entire day I just finished 30 jars of homemade mulberry jam and 100 pears that I sliced and dried. So I'm excited to be here, but I'm a little tired from being in the kitchen for so many hours.
Yeah, especially in the kitchen doing all of that on that hot of a day is like the least fun time to do it. But yeah, when the plants demand harvest and processing, you just got to do it.
Exactly. I live in an orchard, so I have so many different fruits, and by the time I finish one, then the next one is ripe. And each year you don't know what your bumper crop is going to be. So this year it's my mulberries. That's what I have, an incredible amount of mulberries. So I've made mulberry ice cream, mulberry jam, mulberry pies. And when I launch my podcast on September 1st, when they come on my podcast, I'm going to be mailing them a jar of mulberry jam.
Ooh, that makes me want to come on your podcast. I love mulberry.
Great, I'd be happy to have you.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. Well, before we jump in, I just want to thank every single person out there listening, watching, sharing, supporting, and just giving love back to Rogueways, because I love all of you, and I'm so glad that you are here with me on this journey. I couldn't do it without you, so thank you. And if you would like to find more from me outside of the show, you can go to rogueways.org, where I've got all kinds of fun things to offer you in the shop and as support, spiritual and otherwise. So go check it out. And Gail, the pointless question of the episode I'm going to ask you is, what is something that you love about water?
Water is a very important, well, first of all, I'm living in the area where there's a drought right now.
True.
So we want to discuss water. One of the first issues would be is how much we need water and how much we we just take it for granted. True. Until one day you turn your faucet on and no water comes out. And where we live, we have only wells. So if we run out of water or the table gets so low, some people, you'll have to truck in water. I'm not exactly sure what will happen in the future with water. But on a different spiritual level with water, I think it's the most wonderful place to submerge anyone, either after they've had some sort of psychic experience, emotional experience, any kind of sadness, any sort of thing where the person needs to be regrounded again. I think going out to water is the place that happens. And I also find that even though I'm not particularly a good swimmer or anything, I go to a lake where I find that I call it my happy place, because there's something about being there where no Wi-Fi can come through, you're just with nature and water, and there's some very healing element about that. And living right on next to the water, that I wouldn't feel comfortable with. Like I wouldn't want to live right at the ocean with the, right there watching the waves. I wouldn't want to live on the edge of a river or a lake, because I feel there's a lot of energy and power in there. I'd rather go to that place. Another thing I can tell you about water is there's people doing unusual things these days. Like a friend of mine, Kelly, she is getting this water that's called oxygenated water. And there's some gentleman in Las Vegas who's producing this oxygenated water that's supposed to really help you because you're drinking water that's been infused with tremendous amounts of oxygen, and then you're getting oxygen into your blood. So there's another possible use with water. And we did an experiment at the Institute of Noetic Sciences with water.
Oh, wow.
Do you want me to, shall I elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, there's a paper on it that was published in the journal Explore, and I don't have it in front of me, but if anyone goes on to, if you type my name, you can find it online. It would be a paper by Dean Radin. I was one of the assistants, so I'm also authored on there. But it was with Masaru Emoto, and Masaru Emoto is the gentleman who was publishing these books and showing how water can be frozen into crystals, and when they take water from places like the Ganges River or the Amazon or different other places, they would form different crystals when they would freeze this water and show different things that were sort of messages from the lake or bodies of water they were taking it from. Yeah. And so I had told Dr. Dean Radin about it because I was working at the research department at that time. And there was no scientific studies done on it. And so one day, Masaru Emoto and his, entourage arrived at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and they wanted to meet Dean Radin. And so I was just sitting on the outside listening to this. But what they wanted to do was do an actual experiment with bottles of water to see that if you prayed to the bottles of water and then froze those into the crystals, however he does it in his special laboratory, I don't know anything about how it's actually, that part is done. The crystals, would they form beautiful crystals after the water's been prayed? Would the crystals just be like regular crystals? What would happen? So it was a long distance experiment. I'm not exactly sure. I think there was a large number of Japanese people that were praying to the bottles of water, and they were doing it, and I had the bottles of water, had to be Fuji water for some reason, and I packaged and wrapped it so it would be sealed. I put aluminum foils around it and bags and all these things for nothing else to interfere with the waters, and shipped them, including the what's like the placebo, the one that no one knows is that hasn't been prayed.
The control, yeah.
The control, yes. And the crystals that came out were judged by 100 people and were given very lovely ratings for the water that had been prayed to. And it formed beautiful images of crystals, different than, say, when they took it from a very polluted water area. So there's another way water is. Now it's been scientifically proven by a double-blind experiment to show that, yes, you can put your energy into it and it does affect what type of crystal forms from the water after that.
Yeah.
There was something else I wanted to tell you about water. One other thing, but I can't remember now. Okay.
It'll come back up if it can.
Yes.
One thing I love too about water is that it is like this. Like it can hold so much energy, like that. And one of the best moments in my life is when I lived pretty far out in the rural areas, and I would hike really early, really high up into the mountains and go to these lakes where no one else was, as far as I knew, for who knows how many miles, and swim out to the middle of the lake and just float. And it's like this, like it's like the closest you can get to being back in the womb and just being like embraced by all, that is amazing. It's like the best feeling. And it's so rare to be able to be alone in nature these days.
I do want to say, you just reminded me of the other story I want to tell you.
Good.
Because you said it's like being immersed in nature.
Yeah.
Well, I gave birth to my last daughter, Tasha, in my bathtub.
Oh, awesome.
So I gave birth under all odds, first of all, because I'd had cervical cancer, so half of cervix was gone.
Wow.
I was 41 years old, which is not the age you should be giving birth. Well, back 25 years ago, it wasn't as common. Now it's much more common to be pregnant and have babies in their 40s.
True.
But if you're thinking about 25, 30 years ago, it was not as common, and they assumed you could have a child with problems because you were so old or whatever. And I had this doctor, Sharon Olson, because I was a very high risk birth. And so I wasn't going to have a midwife didn't want to do this, but I found a doctor who, she lives in Hawaii now, Dr. Sharon Olson, and she was willing to, after meeting me, she felt I definitely was the kind of person who could go through this and that she wouldn't be worried. And she was a wonderful support system, but she suggested I give birth underwater. And I had given birth to my son at 35 years old, which was like 8 months or so. It was like a year after I had cervical cancer, I conceived a child right away. And I was told that it'd be very dangerous. He might fall out. You have to get sewn up, blah, blah, blah. But none of those things happened. And I gave birth to him at home in the bed. And what a beautiful thing. We still live in the same place. I've been here 43 years. So both children were born here, and my first daughter learned to walk here. So when she said that, would you like to give birth in a bathtub? I said, no.
Why? Yeah.
I said, I can hardly swim myself. I said, she'll drown, you know, or he, or whatever. I always dream the sex of my child, and I've never been wrong on my 3 times of trying it. So that's my good fortune of knowing what they are. So I was not convinced to do this. So she sent us, I think it was a VHS then. It was probably VHS, not DVD. And it was a video of women giving birth in Russia, where they were all giving birth, you know, in these pools of water. And they were showing like young newborn, couple-month-old size babies that they were dropping into the water, and the babies were just swimming, you know. And I'm looking at this and I'm like mortified, like the idea of putting my baby in the water. All I imagine is they're gonna drown, you know. Yeah. So I said to her, I don't feel that, I said, I have a lot of respect for water, but I don't know that I feel trustworthy to give birth in this, you know. And I'd happened to have installed only, let's see, she was born in 1996. And in 1993, I had installed a huge claw bathtub that was for 2 people.
I love it.
And it was so big that I was doing an addition on my house, and the bathtub had to be lowered in with a crane.
Wow.
So it's like there forever. We're never moving this bathtub out. But I had no idea that I would give birth into it, which I saved a lot of money not going to the hospital. It kind of paid for the bathtub, you know?
There you go.
Yes, and it, you know, it was a Kohler tub, which was another story. But anyway, so she said, well, what we'll do is, you know, she kept talking to me about it. She said, what we'll do is I'll have you labor in the tub. And she said, when you get to the moment where we know you're crowning and it's time that you're going to give birth, she said, I'll help you out of the tub and you can give birth in the bed. And so I said, I can live with that. Because I thought, well, and I want to say to any pregnant women out there, I hope you're listening to this, because I've given birth in a hospital, a bed, and a bathtub. And I have to say the bathtub is the #1 place to give birth in. I was laboring because, you know, as you have more children, usually your labor is reduced. And I'm in the tub for 3 hours, and they're spraying, like, you know, the handheld shower thingy kind of thing, whatever you call it. She's using that because you have to keep the water warm and it's cooling off. I'm, of course, in giving birth space, so I don't even know that how long or what's going on, that they're adding water. And I feel like I'm only in there for 10 minutes when I'm going to give birth. And so she tells me it's time and it's 3 hours. I'm thinking to myself, this was such a comfortable place because all the water was like supporting the labor and making it so that it was like lighter weight or something. It just was not as difficult as dry birth, I call them now.
Dry birth.
And so she said, now's the time to get out. And I said, no, I don't want to, because I felt so good in there. And we filmed this whole birth, except we did it in candlelight, so you actually don't get to see anything. All you hear is,
you just hear it.
So she just floated out into the tub. And her eyes were open, and she was like, I'm here, you know what I mean? And she was like, where's the party? And she's like waving her hand. And it was the most comforting space and everything. So anytime I want every woman to know there's a way you can give birth and have the right person who can help you to have birth in a tub, in water. best way to do it. So there's another story to add for water and the support of what it can do for you. The other part of the water was, I didn't realize we could have so many things to say about
I
water.
love it.
Was that when you have newborn babies, they always have this like little crying hour in the night or whatever, you know, and it's whatever, same kind of time. And they're like, and you got to put them back to sleep. All you had to do with her was turn the faucet on. And when you turn the faucet on, she calmed right down every time.
Wow.
And when she was bigger, and when, you know, the doctor had said, oh yeah, you can teach her how to swim, guys. I'm not doing that. I don't mean like the Russian babies. But my husband accidentally dropped her in the pool. Pool once, bathtub once.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
he was holding her and slipped. Well, she didn't even cry. She was like, oh yeah, we're in the water, we're out of the water. She had no like fears or anything about water, which I happen to have a lot of more fears of being afraid of drowning or whatever. So it was a wonderful teaching. And at 41 years old, to give birth in the water was a fabulous place.
Wow. I'm sure too it can hold all these blessings, right? If you pay to that water that your baby's being birthed in and put that energy into it, like Amoto showed us we could do, then that can be like your baby's first blessing or baptism, you know, like that's really cool.
Well, in fact, I met Dean, I gave birth to her in 96, and I met Russell Targ and Dean Radin in 98. And so she would come sometimes when I'd go to these, they'd have sort of a social thing at the Interval Research where they were all working, and my husband worked there. So I'd come down with her as a baby, and we'd sit and listen to the little talk. And so that's really was the beginning of all these things that started to happen.
Oh, wow. Wow, your kids must be so... Are they into all of these sort of things as well, or are they kind of like, that's your thing?
Okay, well, when you have 3 children, you know, each one's going to be different.
Absolutely.
So the one Tasha I was just speaking about, she's as skeptical as they come. And Dean was here one day, we were all having dinner, and she had said about how skeptical she was, and he told her that's very important to be skeptical. It's very, very, so she supports his skeptical. But she also knows how her mother is not like your regular mothers on knowing things that are going on in your life.
Yeah.
My oldest daughter is very interested in all of these different things, and she herself has dreamt, my daughter Nancy, she has dreamt, you know, disasters before they happen, like has a horrific nightmare, and then the next day there's some disaster that's happened. Or she's had things where she dreams about someone, and then the next day she sees them on the New York subway out of nowhere when she's only there for a week, and they both don't even live in New York.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of, you know, and she's very, she really loves the astrology. She's very into astrology, and she's very right on with her things when she calls you up and tells you something.
Wow.
So she, I would say, has definitely more of an inkling, and she's my first child. And my son, he is very supportive, and it's not his thing, but he knows if I say, did this happen, or maybe you shouldn't go, or if I have a feeling, he respects my, you know, he doesn't make fun of me that, you know, I mean, he makes fun of me, but you know what I mean.
In a loving way. He respects it enough to listen and understand that it's real. There's something to it, even if it's not his like wheelhouse, whatever you say.
They also each participate. I told you this podcast, we're going to launch a small, medium, at large podcast. My son did the music. My daughter made the website, and my other daughter made all the labels for the mulberry jams I'm sending. So they all support me in a very nice way.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Well, what about your childhood? Were your parents into anything like this, or was it just kind of run of the mill? Or
where do you want me to begin on that one?
Wherever you want to go.
Okay. I had no conventional type childhood. It was a very unconventional childhood. And I'm sure if you interviewed each 5 of us, we were a family with 5 kids, we'd all give you a different stories version. But this would be my version. And of course, everyone being different ages are knowing and seeing different things as you're growing up.
True.
So my father, I'm not sure how much history you want here. But actually, I think I'll tell you, because I think it's the reason that I'm more psychic as a child than, say, someone else was,
Yeah.
is because my parents had lied to me about who my mother was.
Oh, wow.
And my mother turned out to be my father's girlfriend. And so it was, if it had been the 60s or the 70s, it would be fine. But in the 50s, this was not fine. So there's always secrecy and hidden things and all this stuff that went on. Nowadays, they'd say, yeah, he has two women,
Yeah, that's just how it is.
Right, they live in a commune or whatever, but this was not those times.
Oh.
So my father and my mother were car thieves that were stealing cars in New York.
Wow.
I think they were stealing Cadillacs and Buicks, I think, or I can't remember. But he got mad at me once when I didn't tell him the right other,
No, we only steal the best cars.
Exactly. Exactly. So when she went to give birth to me, and my mother, my father's wife, who I consider my mother, I consider them both my mothers, but she was very supportive of my father. She didn't say, don't go out. She actually would dress him for his dates with my mother.
Wow.
But his wife, the mother who raised me since I was born, this was really too much for her to bring home another child and say, here, raise this child. But that's exactly what happened. So when my mother, Margie, went to give birth at the hospital, she registered as my mother, Irma, so that my birth certificate says that I'm born to these two people who were married to each other.
Wow.
So I'm living with this falsified birth certificate for the last 66 years. And the information on it, some of it is incorrect, which I don't figure out till later in life. So this comes down to the psychic part. He would take me every now and then to go out with him to see his girlfriend. I thought I was seeing his girlfriend, but I was really seeing my mother. And she had given me up from the hospital. They drove to the hospital in 1955 stolen Cadillac, and they left in a 1948 Plymouth or something with no windshields and no windows. And I was in some kind of special hospital shoebox because I was only 4 pounds.
Wow.
And my father was not into incubation or medical things even back then. So he said, no, I don't want her incubated. We're taking her now. And I was dropped off to my other mother, Irma, who had me for the next, years raising this child. And so I would be in the family, and all those secrets that would be going on, I think, is what developed my psychic.
Your spidey sense was like, this isn't right.
Something's not right. Exactly. How come I have blonde, straight hair, pointy nose, and blue eyes, and my sisters all have brown, curly hair, And in the picture of 5, I'm the middle child, and I don't look like the rest of these people. So I could show you all these things, but we don't need to do that.
Yeah.
So what happened was I wasn't told until I was 17 years old. And up until I had all these little incidents would happen, and I would think, that doesn't seem right. Why does that not fit in? And my father was walking by I was living in a little cabin in the woods here, and he was walking by and he said to me, oh, I forgot to tell you something. Your mother wasn't your mother. Margie was your mother. It's no big deal. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Wow.
And he walked off. And it was like having, sometimes they show these in films what a psychedelic experience might look like. And I've had psychedelic experiences, but this was a psychedelic experience without psychedelic. All the images of 17 years worth of question marks all came into my mind like a flood. Scenes where you said, wait a minute, when I said, how was my birth? And my mother said, oh, it was the easiest one I ever had. Yeah, because she didn't give birth to me,
That's awesome.
So the healing and the beauty of this is that during the childhood, my mother was extremely emotionally and physically abusive to me because I wasn't her child. And she didn't like living in this lie. And a lot was put on her, which I understand now, but as a child I didn't. So we both spent our times, at war with each other. She's 94 years old now, the only one left of those 3 characters.
Wow.
And I bring her homemade jellies and foods, and she lives about 20 minutes away. And to get to the point of a relationship where there was so much scarring and things that would give you PTSD, to a place where the same two people together are saying how much we love each other. She calls me up to tell me I'm the most wonderful daughter after all of the things that have gone. And that's the healing parts of life that is the most important parts. It's only till we come to our death that we realize, oh, relationships, oh, that's what we should have been doing, not making lots of money, you know? So what I want to say is that during that time, my dad had, when he'd gone to prison, he was having spiritual experiences when he was in solitary confinement. And he was in a federal penitentiary because the judge had heard about the affair and the other child and all this. And he said he was a man with no morals. And my father couldn't read or write English then because he'd been raised in this Yiddish household and he was taught not to speak English at home. So he just never had done well in his education. Well, in prison, he learned all these things and studied all these religions and had all these spiritual experiences in there. And he said it was the best teaching of his life. He was there for about a year and a half, and I think it was Lewisburg. And in that time, he decided to change his life. And when he came out, I think he had worked in the prison slaughterhouse at some point or something like this. When he came out, he decided that he wanted to explore spirituality, and he decided he wanted to find out more about diet and food and eating. So he attended theosophical meetings in New York, which are very, like, you know, this is 1960 when he was doing this. And he met other individuals, and he started to learn about vegetarians and veganism and meditation and spirituality and yoga and all the different things he started to get exposed at from these different meetings he was going to. So he was always an open thinking mind. And when he was in prison with the Rosenbergs. That was a case from those years, and Wilhelm Reich.
Wow.
And these were people that he would go to temple with the Rosenbergs, you know, and he studied all these different religions he'd known nothing about. And there was the time and place to do that. In fact, when I met Timothy Leary, he also had the same thing to say, that when he was in prison, he got so much accomplished and learned so much in the time that he was there. Also with the attitude of prison was a great experience for me, not that it ruined my life experience. So he came home one day after all these meetings and said, we're going to go live in a commune in Southern California. We're all becoming vegans now, and we're going to be doing yoga. And that was pretty unusual back then. I mean, we were drinking wheatgrass juice, which now is, oh, yeah, everybody drinks wheatgrass juice. But in 1962, nobody was drinking wheatgrass juice.
Wow.
So in going to that commune, different people came and spoke there, because this was not like a hippie commune. This was a true commune where certain groups of people worked and other people took care of the house and other people made the food, and it was very organized.
Like, what is it? Walden 2, maybe. I
hadn't seen that, but
okay.
This was with the actual president of the Vegan Society, which is in Malaga, New Jersey. I think it's still there today. And so we also had a Hindu monk that lived with us. Like, not everybody has a Hindu monk living with them, right? No. When you're 6 years old. We had we had a couple who came who told us all about UFOs and how he had been taken away and abducted and gone off into a little spaceship. He showed me pictures, you know. I'm just saying, I'm 6, 7 years old, but you don't forget these things. We had the garlic man who, you know, lived on garlic. His dogs were on garlic. He was, you know, garlic is the thing to save your life. Well, the interaction with the Hindu monk, Swami Vivekananda Saraswati, which also I never forget from that, you know, all this 60 years later, you don't forget that name even. Wow. He would do things with me, like teach me how to play chess. He would teach me card tricks. I would hold the cards and he would read the card and tell me what the card was. So this wasn't your usual babysitter, you know. They maybe played Crazy 8 with you. They didn't say, yeah, it's an 8 of spades, you know. And then on top of that, my father's mother, Grandma Schneider, who came from, we always called it the old country. She came from Poland, from Branks, Poland. That some of the times it was Russia, some of the times it was Poland, depending on the wars. And she was a very spiritual woman, and my father never understood it. And later in life, he said, now I understand what she was talking about, the spiritual. And he said I didn't realize what all it was. I thought it was, hocus pocus or whatever. But she always spoke to the dead. And she would tell these things to my father. She would tell these things to me as a child because we all lived in the same house. We lived upstairs, they lived downstairs. I'd go downstairs and she'd say, I just had some visits from Label and somebody else that, that was a son that had died of hers. And she's saying, we had a talk and they had a visit and then they were gone, So I'm just saying, I think these are the foundation things that are not your regular childhood stories. Like someone I was speaking to was saying to me that when she was in her late 60s and her mother was in her 90s or 80s, her mother finally told her she was a medium. She never told her all the years of her life. So there's a lot of this in families where they don't share this.
Yeah.
And I think when I've done some research, speaking with people who have psychic experiences and they need to talk to someone because they're confused and they never had one, or they want to know, why is this item in my room moving, or why is my child acting like this? If you get into them to relax and talk about it, they will finally realize they had a grandmother or an aunt or a grandfather or somebody where this actually was going on, but it was kept shh, or because they were Catholic or they were religious or whatever. They didn't want to really share that thing that was going on. But you will often find that it can run genetically in families.
Yeah.
Also, the other part was that when they had trauma similar to like my childhood type of trauma, they also had, I'd say to them, so just tell me, you've been this way psychic for some time. When you were younger, did you have any traumatic things happen? And you'll usually find that sometimes, not everyone, some people have a perfect father knows best life or whatever, and they happen to be tremendously psychic. So I'm not saying this is for everybody, but it does seem to develop more of that.
Yeah. It seems very common, and I always am trying to figure out why, and the best I've come up with yet is that when you go through trauma and you heal yourself, well, now you have that gift to offer to others to heal them, or you have a deeper soul connection because you had to go in there and figure it out. Like, what do you think about why?
I think that's exactly true.
Okay.
Because, and I think it depends how you deal with it. For me, it made me a more compassionate person. It made me a more giving person. I'm very grateful. I have understanding of pains that people experience because I've experienced them. And some people don't go that route. They may take a different path and become angry or abuse other people themselves, or depends which route you take.
Yeah.
I'm happy that that was not my route. My route was to grow from all of that. And so I don't feel anger. I never felt hatred or anger to them for what they did. I'm very grateful I was raised in the family with my father, and if I'd been raised by my mother, I'd have been miserable. Her kids went to Catholic school. I would have died there.
Yeah. Yeah. Too restrictive.
I was a free spirit. I didn't want to be, corralled in any way. So as we were getting on into living in California, and we came back again in 1970, my dad decided to drop out of the regular conventional lifestyle of working a 9-to-5 job. He was an auto mechanic in New York, in the snow, in the freezing cold. He said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm dropping out. I'm going to California. He took my 2 brothers out of school, and they came out here living in a pickup truck, looking for the ideal place to settle down, because we had done a lot of traveling over the years. And my mother said, I'm not going again until you find the place, and just call me and then I'll come. Which I didn't blame her, believe
I can
me.
understand that, yeah.
Right, she had enough schlepping around the planet. So my dad came out here, and I ended up following behind. It's a whole nother long story I won't get into, but it was a wonderful thing. I also dropped out of school. My dad was not into education or religion, so he raised an atheist. And when I came home, I was in the SP. I was given an opportunity to possibly go to Hunter High School, which was a very important school in New York. I had gotten very high scholastic grades. He'd say, I'm not interested in any of that. The brainwashing institution. It teaches you not to think. He'd say, so if you want to go there and become an idiot, go ahead. So he was very proud of me when I dropped out of high school,
Yeah.
and not proud of me when I got such high achievements in school.
Yeah.
So we then got involved with this. It was called Mind Dynamics, and then later on became Werner Erhard, who was our instructor, had left and formed this EST years later. But in this, we were doing all these remote viewing kind of things, but it was for bodies. So not everybody's father. My father was very cheap. And as I've always said to everyone, when I say cheap, I mean, he used to hang his dental floss out on a light bulb to dry it and reuse it. Okay, so frugal, it's beyond frugal.
Exceptionally frugal, yeah.
Yes. So for him to spend, which was then a lot of money, $150, for each of us, even my boyfriend, he paid for us all to take this course because he was so blown away by it. And it gave me the tools that I had never used before, because what I ended up doing was always just my natural things, like I would have dreams, or I would turn to him and I'd say, Dad, Grandpa's going to die. I can see it. I just know it. So how do you know? I said, I don't know. I just know. Those kind of things. All of a sudden, I was taking that and doing a function with it, where you went into a little workshop in your mind, and you had a table, and you put the person in your mind there, and you shed them, you put a little gold light all over them to help heal them. So at 15 and a half, 16, I think I graduated. I was 16 from the course. I was doing healing then.
You were already doing remote healing. That's amazing.
I was doing it on hundreds of bodies.
Wow.
And I did it so well that they brought me down to the main office where I volunteered work, and they would test me on the ones that nobody else could do. They had like a special file, and I would be able to do, we call them cases. I would be able to do these cases. But they didn't teach you about protecting yourself or any of the other things that come with this type of territory.
Yeah.
They were just interested in the money making and the, it attracted all upper middle class and middle class white people. You didn't see a diverse group in the audiences,
No.
and who could shell out that money, And it sort of like made me become like known in our family as she does have some kind of extra little something. I got my relatives who don't believe in any of this and still say, if you can't tell me the amount of change in my pocket, I can't believe you, But if I say to them, oh, such and such a thing, and then it happens, well, that's not enough. I still have to know what's in my pants,
Yeah, some people are just, skepticism is good, but some people just cannot be swayed no matter what.
Exactly. So you have a couple of those, but then you have the other ones in my family who are very supportive. And so it really started then. And even with my girlfriends then, because when I'd come back to visit, I would do these cases on their family and tell them stuff about their mothers and tell them stuff about people, And I got so good at it back then. I always wondered today, had I continued doing what they had done then till now, how would it be like? Maybe I would just be seeing everything instantly. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I ended up having that terrible experience of where someone tries to possess you.
Oh, yeah.
And this happens when you're looking at dying people's bodies and looking at emphysema and cancers. And, and these are things I knew nothing about, but I could rattle off prescriptions to people of what the drug was that the people were on. And so I was learning about my own self by learning that I could do these things. But when the possession came, along with it came tremendous amounts of fear, because remember, I'm only 17, okay? But keep remembering this little part that people sometimes, 17, I'm a teenager.
Well, and there's like a betrayal in there, like, why didn't anyone protect me from this?
Well, not only that, I went directly and called Werner on the phone. I called the staff. I said, and I said, I'm afraid to be alone. I feel this is trying to take over. Can you help me? And they said, no, we can't help you.
Wow.
You create your own reality. That was what there,
There's a lot of that still going on.
Yeah, you create your own reality. So it was my dad who was the one who helped me through this.
Good man.
I was living in San Francisco in an apartment, and I called up my dad and I said, I don't know what to do. I feel, it was always over my left shoulder. I'd feel like this dark presence. And I felt like I was afraid to sleep, like I was afraid to close my eyes. And he said to me, this is an entity trying to, and I don't think every father can answer that question when you call them up.
No.
I wanted to say, my dad, may he be wherever he is, floating out in this consciousness, thank you, thank you, thank you. He said, you have to face whatever it is. He said, say to this object or being or entity, say, you cannot take over my body. You cannot become part of me. You must go. And I went to sleep that night and had a dream that was so real with all of my senses that I can't say that I would ever believe it was really a dream.
Right.
I tasted like a liver in my mouth. I could smell blood. It was really like an exorcism.
Yeah.
And I had a cat in the house who seemed to be reacting at the same time that the things were going on. And when everything finally ended, I won't go into the details of the dream, but when everything finally ended, there was a whole calmness in the bedroom, and the cat just sat down again. Everything became still, and you just sensed and knew that it was all gone.
Yeah.
And, he gave me the right advice. I was able to follow through on what he said. And I've learned much about protection since that in my later years in life. And when I was initiated as a shaman, I'm wearing clothing and things and that protect me when I'm doing this work. And when I put it on, I feel protected. And I don't ever feel worried that entities are going to come in or things are going to happen. I feel a sense of strength in myself. But at 17, who knew that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
It took me, I'm not saying I got this overnight about protection.
Right,
I mean, it did a lot of work to learn these things. So anyhow, so I would say that my father was, to answer that question, I think, throughout the whole life, very supportive of all that.
Yeah, definitely, like you were saying, genetic or ancestral, tendencies and abilities, but also this culture that was very unique. That there's just the names that you've mentioned so far, I'm sure are perking people's ears. Like, wait, did she say like Dean Radin and Timothy Leary? Like these influences too, which I'm sure some of those came later. And I do want to hear about Woodstock and some of these experiences, but. To give your child that experience and that culture and that environment can't hurt either. And I'm sure the two things came together to create this amazing person, which is you, which is really, really cool. But I love that knowledge. Like you said, there's not a lot of people who can tell you what to do in a situation like that. And my listeners know of a similar story of my own life. And that was the loss. Like, well, who do I go to? Like, who can help in this? We don't have people. We don't talk about shamanism and we don't talk about these things. So I'm glad you had him. But also, like you said, learning that protection is essential for anybody who is going to do anything like this, I think. And it really isn't that you created that. And I know a lot of people are into that, and that's cool, but it's not my experience and it's not yours.
No, I did not create that. I might create other things, but I didn't create that.
In a way, you invited it, right? Unintentionally, but that's not the same as like making it.
In the dream, I saw the person who I had been working on as a case, because I took my healing seriously as a teenager.
Yeah.
I would take these people home, and for a week, I would work on each person. Like maybe there were 4 people I did on a Monday, or at a Werner would use me sometimes, and other instructors, where they'd sit me in front of all the people and say, all right, let's pick out a card, and Gail's going to show you how we do this. So I would do this on video in front of people. Russell said I was a shill. I was a shill that they used to sell the program. But I lost my train of thought there. Oh, I was going to say about Dean. I wanted to mention, I can't tell you the scientific words or anything, but I just did an interview with him, so he will be on my podcast in case anyone's interested, as will Russell and a host of other very exciting people.
They're both
and
so awesome.
He's working on some specific thing that I can't explain any of it to you because it's scientific and I am not in a scientific mind, but it has something to do with, they are studying the genetic thing. And what he's been doing is he's been getting like 3 and 4 generationals of people that have had these sort of experiences. And I'm not sure what they're discovering, but they're discovering things about genetics, about this particular situation of psychic or paranormal. So he is working on that, and he's such a brilliant, amazing man with a fantastic sense of humor. So everyone's going to be finding out some amazing things that he's working on.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah, he's so fantastic. They both are really amazing people. If there's anybody out there who hasn't gone and looked at them, maybe you can get your first encounter on Gail's podcast when it comes out. And I've had many times, my father was adopted and it was a closed adoption, so we don't know that side of the family, but it's very clear that he's Native. And I've been told by people who are intuitive, and I feel that it's true intuitively, that my grandparents, my grandmothers, were also, you know, of this type of experience and ability too. And so I feel like that's where it comes from for me, and I feel like that's just true. I don't think, however, that it couldn't like spontaneously occur in someone, or, you know, like I think that's got to be possible too.
Well, I found out on my mother's side, since I didn't know anything about my mother's side of the family, they were all like, they were into fortune telling and went to fortune tellers. So it turns out both sides of my genetics have this sort of thing going on in it. And I also think that it was more, you know, in Russia, Poland, Czechoslovakia, which is where my relatives are from, my grandparents are from. I'm a second generation American. I think a lot of these things were more used and considered part of everyday living. Yeah. My grandma Schneider said they would do something, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a name for it. I'm terrible with remembering names these days, let alone this name. But it was a form of fortune telling. And what was done, and I finally read about it in a book from Siberia, on Siberian cultures. Wow. And a broom would be put over the head of the person. And it would be, say, like someone has troubles, they don't know what's bothering them, you know, maybe it's mental, maybe it's physical, whichever. Mm-hmm. And they'd go into the house, in the kitchen. It was always done in the kitchen, I understand. And it would be a big pot of water, and the broom would be over the person's head, and they would pour wax down the broom over the head into the water. Mm-hmm. And whatever formations the wax made, that would be what was divined into what was the message for that person. Wow. Or if they saw like it was an animal, or if they saw a man's face, or whatever that came about, that's where they would say what this was. And the only person I had told us about this was my grandmother. And then I was reading a book Russell had told me about by a Russian woman. And sure enough, in there, it was there. They didn't use a broom like our family did, but it was the same thing with the hot wax over the head into the boiling water.
Wow.
So, well, maybe it was colder water. I don't know. Not boiling, would have been cold water.
Yeah.
So, you know, these are things you hear about years later in life that, you know, I wish I could have talked to grandma about that now, you know?
Yeah, I know. I have so many things I would talk to my grandmothers about if I could now, but maybe I still can somehow.
I was just thinking that. Or maybe the ones that are on your father's adopted side, maybe they have been working with you for some time. Maybe you have been getting messages. Maybe they are with you, because sometimes I feel like the invisible information could be stronger than when you read a book.
I absolutely is for me. And I only in the the last third of my life or less, have I really begun to understand just how much of that is just coming in all the time and just not from normal sort of sources. And it gets clearer and clearer, but I feel like you're absolutely right. And I feel like I've seen them around me in different sort of spiritual spaces. It's just not very clear. It would be nice to be able to know them very clearly, but at least I know they're there. But I would love to hear about Woodstock and your experiences there, if you want to tell us about that.
Well, I went to Woodstock when I was 14. And because I had an unconventional family, I had no restrictions. I could go anywhere I wanted. So I just said to my dad, going to a concert, I'll be back in a few days, you know, I'm going with some guys, you know. And God, I'm so grateful for that freedom. None of my 14-year-old girlfriends, who I'm still in touch with today, there's 5 of us.
Wow.
Call ourselves the 5 flushing vaginas.
I love it.
We have been together for 60 years now.
Wow.
And we live in different states, but we gather for our 60th birthday. We were going to gather for the 65th, but we couldn't because of COVID. Mm-hmm. So we're Zooming now regularly. But anyways, what did this have to do with Woodstock? So they were not allowed to go. I can tell you that. Their parents were like, no, Gail can go, but you can't. And I went with 4 guys that were 5 years older than me. So they had a car. They, you know, I took care of getting our money and buying the tickets, and, you know, we all supplied foods. We grouply did this wonderful thing, and they thought of me as a younger little sister, so they always protected me wherever I went. So I was a virgin at Woodstock,
That's amazing.
And we ended up getting there on Saturday. So we were only there for Saturday and Sunday because, as I said, these guys were 19 and they all had jobs. So you couldn't leave your job to say, I'm going to a concert. So we had to leave at 5 p.m. the Friday night, and we had to leave Sunday evening so they could be ready for work on Monday. So my experiences are really those 2 full days as far as being there for music and what went on. We all did know we were making history, of course, when we were there.
Yeah.
But we all did see that we were in almost, they would say we are now at 400,000 people here, and there was not one fight. There was not one, people got injured by, an accident or something, and things did happen. There was an accidental death. There was a birth. It was a real living city.
Yeah.
But it was filled with the most caring, loving, conscious people that I have never been in a group of any size like that, having that we are one experience, which was painted across the wood fence. I have never had that again, like what existed there.
Oh, I got chills.
And it's a story that keeps going on. And for me in my life, I was interviewed at the 25 year and in the newspaper. I was in the newspaper in the 50 year. I ended up being in a book in the 50 year. I don't know if can I hold up a book?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's this book that I'm in, the 50-year anniversary of Woodstock.
Oh, how cool.
And it has the photos that I took. I was 14 years old, and I told you my dad was in the gas station. So every now and then guys would come through with hot stolen items, and my dad would buy them. So, he used to be I don't think it was weird to him, and it's New York. Yeah. So he had bought 2 35 millimeter cameras. And he gave me one of the cameras, and this was the first roll of film I'd ever taken in my life. Did I think of taking a picture of myself there? No. Did we think of taking pictures of each other there, me and my guys? No. I did get a few rock people, so I'll just show you a quickie. Here's a photo of the crowd. I don't know if you can see that there.
Yeah.
Like the massive amount of people.
Oh, that's insane.
And that was taken by my boyfriend, Ricky. And then this here's a photo I took of John Sebastian, and that's how close we were.
Wow.
So you can see the few heads. We were in the 12th row. My guys had carried a whole log on, so we had a log to sit on, which really was a big treat, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And I had to sit directly in the mud. And then they asked if I mind being on the drug page. I said, no, we bought tons of drugs with us.
Yeah, that was what it was about.
I only was smoking pot and tried a little upper that time, but here I am in the crowd.
Oh,
it was a photo taken by Michael Landy, or, oh God, don't quote me because I can't remember the photographer's name.
That's awesome. Anyway, someone else got a picture of you just by chance.
Yes. Well, it was the woman who produced this book, Karen Matsu Greenberg. She went through thousands of photos to find stills of me, and she did.
That's so
because
cool.
She didn't want to take it off the movie. I take it off the movie, but because it's not proper in your copywriting or whatever.
Huh.
So instead of getting it, she went and got the actual one. And this is Country Joe McDonald.
Oh, yeah.
Country Joe and the Fish.
Yeah. And
this was when you talk unity, 400,000 people screaming against the war in Vietnam, singing his I Feel Like I'm Fixing to Die rag song. It doesn't get much better than that.
I love that song.
I'm going to just take you through the rest of this since... shall I read my quote in here?
Yes, please do.
Okay. In 1994, the 25th anniversary director's cut was released, featuring more minutes of footage, including performances by Janis Joplin, Jefferson Airplane, Canned Heat. It contained a brief crowd shot that we thought wasn't in the original, because in here it says it wasn't in the original. It actually was in the original, we found out, featuring attendee Gail Hayssen. She said that 40 years to the day after Woodstock, on August 15th, 2009, she saw the DVD of the director's cut. In fact, I'm not going to read the rest of this because I'll tell you the rest of the story. Okay. We were having a music jam here, just with musicians, not like with people to come and listen. and it was people from the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And Dean Radin was coming to play his banjo. My husband plays amazing keyboard and grand piano. Marilyn Schlitz's husband was coming and he was playing guitar, and they were all going to play together. So I was making apple pie, and it turns out it was Woodstock's 40-year anniversary. So I put the movie on, waiting for them to come while I'm making the pie, and I get this call. Dean wasn't feeling well. It's better we cancel. We'll have to reschedule another day. So the movie's playing, the pies are in the oven. I got my apron on. I walk in the living room, and there on my big screen TV is me holding a daisy with the sun shining on my hair. I don't know where that sun came from. And I'm as blonde, and I'm the picture of a flower child. Yeah. And I see this, and I'm like crying, because I had been looking for 40 years for this. I said, I was so close. I've got to be in some book or something. Anyways.
Wow.
I called my husband in, we watched. In fact, on my Facebook, it just came up because I had posted it a couple years ago. So it comes up every August 17.
Oh, yeah.
And and I just posted the video because we took the film footage and put it on my Facebook so people could actually see the video.
Oh, how cool.
Woodstock keeps giving to me from the beginning to the end. I'll finish off with this book. So I ended up being the last quote on the last page of the book.
Oh, wow.
And that really thrilled me. And what it was, do you see this? This is what was it was either painted or drawn across the stage while I was sitting there watching We Are One. Mm-hmm. So right in the front to the left of me, a guy came up and painted We Are One. It was painted across the fence right to the left of the stage, right in front of the Woodstock stage. And I thought that these 3 words captured what that event was. And I've never felt that kind of experience ever again. Oh, so I got to be the last page. And then they put my peace symbol necklace in there that I wore at the Woodstock, that had been given to me by my dearest and most loved friend Sharon when I was 12 years old, and I still had it, 50 years later. So I was invited to be participant with them when they did their book release party, because the author of the book, Dan Buxton, said that when he interviewed me, I was the muse that helped him to finish the book. So I got invited to be there, and I was like, I only contributed some photos and a couple of quotes here, I don't really deserve to be on a book panel, but there I was.
But you carried the energy and without dissipating from that moment to this moment, so that people could still understand. Like, I even just felt it like, oh wow, that's what it was like in a microcosm. So you're the muse. You deserve that.
So it was the first time I was back at the place in 50 years. And every time I've been to New York, I'd never been up to Bethel, to the Woodstock Museum, and going through the museum and seeing all these clothing and things of that time. And, they show photos all around, and the people I got to meet, one of the women in the book that supplied a lot of the photos, Amalia Rothschild, I think she said to the producer of the book, Karen, because we all slept at Karen's house to do this event, she said, oh God, I don't think I really want to spend time with this girl. I don't know about this Gail, you know what I mean? At the end of our 2 nights together, she gave me an autographed copy of her book of the Fillmore East, and all, because she was the photographer of the Fillmore East, all those photos. We hit it off fabulously, even though she expected to not be able to stand me. And I became friends with Dan, the author, with the producer of the book. She came out here and surprised me for my birthday. She stayed with me with her husband now. We've stayed over there with her. Only because of COVID, we haven't been able to reunite again, but as soon as we can, we will be together. I'm friends with these people now. It wasn't just a book. I didn't just give an interview.
Yeah.
It's continued on, and I cherish this. I did a whole talk about Woodstock. I told Dan, I said, you've got to check it out. I'm letting everyone know what you did here, And so it's something that keeps going on. When my husband was invited to Italy to do work, he's a computer scientist. He was working for this very nice man, and when they heard I'd been to Woodstock, apparently in Italy, that was a very big deal to this day. They embrace American culture there, or something about our culture or something. That was what I was explained. And so the first morning when I woke up and I was in one of their bed and breakfasts that, they knew that, in a small town called Gorizia. And I come down to eat breakfast by myself because my husband's off to the meetings. And they blast Jimi Hendrix Woodstock when I walk in the and the owner comes to meet me and he said, I heard you were at Woodstock. And I'm thinking, who cares? Obviously these people cared, And then when my husband, because of me finding it, that, I had posted this thing, so that's how they heard about it on a Facebook or whatever. So he went to meet with the publishing company that they were doing some special work for. And when they came in, they introduced him and said, yeah, this is David Levitt from, California and la la la. They said, well, we wanted to see the pictures that you have from your wife at Woodstock. I went to Italy and Woodstock followed me there. So I'm just saying it keeps on giving. I have a whole front page from our newspaper, that's our local Press Democrat. She came out and did a whole page on me, came out, took pictures. I mean, so it's, and when you're getting older, you like getting these little uplifts.
Yes.
So anyhow, I can't say enough about what Woodstock did for me. And also how after that, I went back and 1 year later, I was living in California. So I'm just saying life did change after going to Woodstock.
Wow.
And one of the guys that I went to Woodstock with, him and I left for California together.
Oh, that's awesome.
Also, the author said when they were interviewing people that most common was that everyone who ever went together didn't leave the concert together. He said that was very rare when he was interviewing.
Huh.
He said, I was one of the few people that went with the same 4 guys and returned with the same 4 guys.
Interesting. Yeah, I can understand that. Well, it's really amazing to think about, like you said, that message, we are one, and that unity and that consciousness that went into that intentionality behind that, and how rare that is, and just how many people were there at that time, also pretty rare, especially for that time. I feel like now if we could do something like that again, it would be so effective, because whether you know it or not, when you're in this group, and especially with music and the intention and all of this energy, you're just like swapping information, at a subconscious level, and like everybody can kind of raise up together, and we just feel so separate now. And I wish we could do it again.
I have to say, the point that I'm not stating here, that's the more point of how rare something like this could be, is that every adverse condition was there. You could not leave the concert if you wanted to. The roads were completely closed down. We were only there because of an alternative route that my guys figured out ahead of time, being good guys, that we would take, knowing there might be some traffic, not 400,000 people's cars worth of traffic. We didn't think that. We thought we were going to a regular concert, right? But we know New York, on a Friday night, Saturday, you're going to have traffic. So we had and that's the only reason we got there. Actually, they did some illegal traffic driving up a ramp or down a ramp in the wrong direction or whatever. Awesome. And so we got to the right side of a freeway. But you were stuck there. There were no more places to buy food. There was if you didn't have food, we shared all the food we had. We shared all the pot we had. We shared what we had with other people. We had so much. But there were other people lots of people never even brought a camera there. So people came with, one pair of clothes, figure you go to the concert, come home tonight, That's not what happened. You're stuck there. And you're stuck in mud that stinks, like a certain farm stench to it. Yeah. Not repulsive, but, farmy. And you have there's no grades of green grass anywhere. You're just sitting in mud. You're smashed like, when I say a sardine, because we wanted to be in the 12th row, we had a log, but you were scrunched up. On Sunday, when Joe Cocker was on, we went to the way back of the entire concert, to the back where you could lay down on a blanket and stretch your legs out, because we couldn't do another 12 hours like that. Yeah. The bathrooms you got to use in the beginning, so at some point Saturday, no trucks that haul away the refuse, the garbage, the sewage, no one could get in to get any of those things. So imagine all those people, the garbage they're making, the waste they're making for the toilets. It couldn't be, so all of a sudden you had no food, no bathrooms, no roads to get in and out. And, you might have lost a friend trying to find them, in the grounds, trying to get around, get your ride to go home, whatever it was. There was, that kind of thing going on there. And there was no fighting and no problems amongst the people. And people didn't have, you needed water. There was, people were bathing there in some water near the place. People were bathing. We didn't do the exploring around there because we were so close up front. You had to stay there and,
keep
man your spot. Yeah. But there were things that were being offered by Wavy Gravy and the Hog Farm where people set up places for people that were having bad experiences or people that needed, first aid. I mean, people were giving so much of themselves in other ways that I never got to see because I didn't explore the other parts. We were strictly concert right there in the front, except for the mudslides where the kids were all coming down, this hillside in mud, covering themselves in mud and just laughing in joy and glee. It was a very amazing experience. And I went to a Led Zeppelin concert and I had to leave because the energy in there was, I went outside to listen to the concert. People were throwing things, pushing people. And It wasn't, I'm just saying, it wasn't, people do these things when a concert's just normally having regular stuff. Imagine what that was like when there were no, and we saved all that money to go and pay for the tickets. And then you get there and there are no ticket booths. And all you see is a chain link fence down to the ground and all the kids walking over it.
Wow.
And the neighbors in the town, that was the other part I remembered, that, some people talked about people who were angry about this or that. I hadn't seen that. I only saw neighbors and people that were so kind to all the kids coming through. They put hoses out with cups and things and said, help yourself if you need water. And, if they had some little food, they might have, they just were very nice. The town was really nice people. So the whole thing was, and the police, everything, it was a really high conscious event.
And I'm sure, I feel like it's just obvious, but that it just created, I feel like we're in a different reality than we would have been if that hadn't happened. A much better, lighter, freer reality. And I hope we keep that going, I hope we continue to uplift in those ways and others. And, I think part of that is like the accidental, unintentional magic of people just following their heart. They're like, hey, you want to have a concert? Yeah, let's have a concert. And then everyone's like, I want to go to a concert.
And then it was spread by radio and word of mouth. That was kids all listened to the radio. That's how you got updates on who was coming, what things were happening. Nowadays, it's a different, you have the information highway here,
Yeah. Yeah, very different now. Well, I guess we'll make a hard transition into talking about remote viewing, and I guess you've helped find missing people using this skill?
I've only done that twice.
Okay.
And, first of all, I didn't know that I could do that, but it's a very, it's not something I would want. There's a lot of heavy energy around when you're looking for the person. Do you want me to tell you the two missing person stories, how they occur?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, the first time was, actually, which one was first? The first time, it was a psychiatrist in Berkeley. In fact, he was Ram Dass's psychiatrist after Ram Dass had a stroke.
Oh, wow.
And he was treating him, for free and, helping him. And I actually participated in some of that. They had me do a psychic remote viewing on Ram Dass to find out what were the things that were bothering him. And the things that I said turned out to be exactly what brought him to tears when the therapist used those words I mentioned.
Oh, I love that.
So it was a very unusual, it was an interesting connection. But anyway, I did a retreat with Ram Dass once, a 10-day retreat. Anyhow, so I get this call because this psychiatrist had read my manuscript. I wrote a book called The Small, Medium, and Large. Guess what? Still looking for a publisher. And after he read the book, he said to me, I'm going to call you one day. I said, okay. Someone I knew had given him my book to read. So I didn't know this man that well, but we started to get to know each other. He'd invite me down to these little sessions they would have, and I'd participate. And so I didn't speak to him for 6 months. And all of a sudden I get this call and he says, I'm in my office right now and I'm speaking to this gentleman and his mother has been missing. And we want you to tell us where she is. And I was like, what?
Like,
I've never looked for a missing person. I don't know how to do this, right? What is he asking me this for, right? But whatever he read in my book made him feel confident that I could do this.
Wow.
And this is a highly respected psychiatrist. He's not a Looney Tune kind of guy or anything. And he's no longer with us. And so I say to him, okay, I said, I don't know what I'm going to be able to tell this young man, but put him on the phone. I'm in the kitchen doing dishes. You know, it's not like I'm sitting in some meditative place or something, right?
Yeah.
So I get on the phone and he says to me, my mother's been missing for 8 days. And I just visited her and we had a lovely Christmas together. And I came home. He said she moved to Colorado. She left Berkeley and moved to Colorado because she has a new boyfriend and she wanted to go live more, you know, not in a city and go live in a more rural area in Colorado. And he said, and I came out to visit her. And then when I got home, she sent me a check for $700, which I thought was really strange because my mother doesn't have a lot of money. So I'm not sure why she sent me the $700. And he said, and I called to tell her thank you. And I've never been able to reach her. And the police department's gone out there and she's not in the house and they don't know what has happened. Exactly when he says this, I get a vision in my mind. And the first thing I say to him is, I forget what his name is, but I'd rather keep the privacy for the persons anyway. He says, I said to him, does your mom have cancer? He said, no, my mom's very healthy. She's a hiker, a backpacker, and she's in great health. And I said, did she have any other physical things? He said, no, she's in great health. I said, well, what do you feel happened to her? And he said, I feel like she's not here anymore. I said, well, you're her son. You should trust your gut feelings. And that's all I could say, because inside I'm going crazy that I'm seeing a whole vision of this woman. So the psychiatrist gets on the phone. And I say to him, I didn't know what to tell the son. I said, I saw the mother. I said, but I don't know if this is right or not. I've never looked for a missing person before. I've never done this.
Yeah.
I said, but I saw a woman slumped over on a steering wheel in a car, dead by the side of the road near an area where it's like a lot of boulders and rocky kind of things.
Yeah.
And so he says to me, okay. I said, but I don't want to say that to him. I don't know if information is correct. I don't know. I don't want to say that. I said, but I'm always happy to help anyone if there's any way I can, and if I can bring any comfort, but I don't want to say anything to upset them or do anything that could be wrong.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what I'm seeing here, if that's true, right?
Right.
So he says to me, okay, we really thank you, Gail, for, helping. And then I hang up the phone, like completely bewildered, right? I go back to fishing the dishes and cleaning up. And then the phone rings again, and it's a few hours later, and he says to me, the son just received a phone call from the Colorado police. They found his mother. She was in a car, dead on the side of the road, just like where you described, with boulders. They didn't find it. It was maybe coincidentally. They didn't find it because of what I said. I don't think it had anything to do with it. But the police actually wanted my information after. They called the psychiatrist back and they said, we think there might have been foul play. Could you please ask I don't know if they called me a psychic, yeah. I don't know what they told me. If you could please ask her what she feels. And when he called me back, the confidence and assured knowingness that I had was so strong that I had no question. It wasn't like, I don't know. Yeah. I said, there was absolutely nothing bad involved. I said, what happened here? I said, I didn't feel negative violence, none of the kind of things like I felt when I did say the next one I'll tell you about. Mm-hmm. I said, but it felt sad for me and emotional. That's the difficulty for me. I'm a very emotional person. And with death, I connect so deeply. So this kind of work is really kind of not the avenue I really want to go down.
Yeah.
But I obviously was able to do this. So then he calls me back another few hours later after he gives the police my information. And they went back to the home again because they didn't disturb anything because they saw nothing was there. And they found she had written a letter to the family. And she had said, I was diagnosed in Berkeley with a cancer that wasn't even treatable. That's how advanced it was. And there was no hope for me except that I would die very soon, a horrible death. I didn't want to put you all through that. And so I came out here and I took my life. And that was the, and for me, it makes me emotional just telling you about it again. I'm just saying that's how I operate. I don't have any specific, I never know what's going to happen, but
yeah.
I'm not one of these that says, oh, I'll tell you your readings and I'll tell you everything about your life.
Yeah.
If it comes to me, I say, oh, I just heard something about your life,
Yeah. Very similar.
So, after that was over, I was at a International Remote Viewing Association conference, and there was this woman there, Bev Jager. She's awesome. It's sad to me that a lot of these people I'm telling you about are all passed on now.
Yeah.
But they were in their older years when I met them. And I'm just grateful that I got to meet them before they did.
Yeah.
So she was an amazing lady and hysterically funny. And like she had the beehive hair up to here, she had her hair out to here, and she was hysterical. And she had an organization, not an organization, but I don't know if you call it a business, I don't know what you call it, but she worked directly for 30 years, her company or whatever, the Psy Squad, worked directly with the police for 30 years, wow. But always in secret. The police would never say, we got some information from Bev,
Yeah, I can't say that.
That's how we, that's
psychic
how we
told us.
Right, that's how we found you, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't say things like that.
No.
So she said, I think I told them my story about what had happened with that psychiatrist. And so she said, well, we do cases and we look for other people to work with. Maybe you'd like to work with us sometime. So I left sort of okay, I guess sometime I could try that with you. She passed away, but Lance, who I had met through her, another wonderful man, took over the Psy Squad and called me up and asked me if I wanted to do a missing person case. And now this was done very different. This isn't like the psychiatrist where he calls me on the phone, I'm just there, hi. This is where they have a whole plan of what they do. They select like 5 different intuitive psychic people around the country. They're not in the same room or anything. And they send an object of the missing person to each person. And then they interview them on the phone and they say to them, okay, what are the impressions you're getting? What do you feel with the object? And then what they do is they get that list or that story from each person. And then as they read the 5 of them, before they give the final report for the police, they pick out, did 5 people say that they were in an abandoned building in the desert? And if 5 people said that, then that goes on that list. Whatever is in common the most with the 5 different people giving the information. So when we did this, it turned out it was a hairbrush that was sent. Everyone got the hairbrush turn except me. I don't know, this always happens to me. Yeah. Left out again, So I did it without the hairbrush. I did it with just whatever. And on some of these, you don't get, like with the first story I told you about, there was immediate validation and information for me. On one like this, you don't get any immediate you might be 2 years before they solve the case and you find out whether those things were correct. But the actual going to the site where I was looking for a missing person was filled with so much scary, negative kind of energy around. It was like an abduction or a violence, or she was locked in this building somewhere in a desert field, a desert area or something. I can't remember what the whole vision was. Yeah. But that was like enough for me. I didn't really want to do missing persons. And then people kept going, well, I'm missing this item. Can you find this? Or I'm missing that, Yeah. I lose things and I can't find them. It doesn't always work. So I don't want to. I just don't want the impression that I do missing persons as in the paranormal. I've just discovered I happen to have abilities in all of the different areas. It's just that my things are really stronger in some, and the others I feel like I just tried them. Mm-hmm. You must know what I mean, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I've done a few remote viewing things, and I have some skill, but I don't know, maybe if I practice it, like you were saying, if I practice it all the time and for the rest of my life, maybe I'd be amazing at it. But for now, it's just like, I get hits and stuff, but it's just kind of vague. So, but yeah, there's other areas where I feel a lot stronger in. So I think that's accurate. I bet that's true for most people, even if they feel like they have no skills. I bet there's something that they're actually could be like pretty good at.
Well, I have something I'd like to share with you if we could talk about that.
Absolutely.
What I want to show you is that, first of all, I've never been trained as a remote viewer. And, someone like Russell Targ will tell you, you don't have to spend $3,000 to take some long, fancy course. He said, everyone can do this. And it's like, once you're given permission to know that you can do this, it comes, and it comes easier. But because Russell, some people don't know who he is out there, but he was involved in a program for 20 years at Stanford Research Institute on psychic remote viewing for the government. And so it was a secret project for 20 years, funded for $20 million, and they trained the CIA and the military how to do remote viewing.
And people, even though the events of the movie have nothing to do with his specific story, isn't Men Who Stare at Goats based off of his?
That's some of the things that went on. Like, but if you want to know the real true story, can I hold up another thing?
Yeah.
Here's his DVD called Third Eye Spies. It's on YouTube.
Cool. And
it's a 2-hour documentary. It will tell you the entire story of what went on, and much better than if I were to give you, from my terrible memory, things that happened. I also happened to be in this, not in the feature length anymore, because the CIA had so much information to speak about that I got cut. I was in the original full length, but I am on a YouTube video that's called Remote Viewing with Russell Targ and Gail Hayssen, and it's had over 7,000 views, and it's only a 6-minute video, but it was made for part of this movie at the time. Anyways, back to what I want to show you.
Yes.
Russell and I and my husband, we have been friends for, since 1998. So our friendship and that's when I started doing remote viewing for them. So I've been doing remote viewing for over 20 years for Russell and for Dean. And my husband is a brilliant scientist. He's an MIT. He was at the MIT Media Lab for many years, got his PhD in artificial intelligence.
Wow.
He went to Yale at 16. He's a smart guy. So one day Russell said to him, do you think you could take the machinery, the equipment that we use to train the military and the CIA to develop their remote viewing and to practice a trainer, an educational thing? Could you take this big box thing and turn it into a handheld device on your Apple phone? And sure enough, years ago, my husband did his first app for them. I'm going to show you a picture of it.
Wow.
And it's called the ESP Trainer. And I'm not sure if it's on Android, but I know it's on Apple. It might have been added to Android, so you can check. The next app I'm going to show you is only on Apple, and that was just released 3 months ago. The ESP Trainer, it looks like this. There's 4 squares. You see the squares?
Yeah.
And now when you see the squares, which one, there's green, red, blue, or yellow, do you think there's a picture behind it?
I don't know. It might be blue, but the upper left.
Okay, that's the green. The one up here?
Green, yeah.
Okay, so it's not the green. Let's try the blue that you thought. Okay, so now, all right, we have to keep going till you get one.
Red.
So you can see, all right.
We'll do red.
Okay, how about we try blue? We'll try green. No, okay, it was blue. So it highlights which one the picture's really been hidden under. And you do this 24 times. And then, okay, so now we hit the picture. Okay, so when I hit the yellow one, the picture comes up, then it goes away. And up here, you get a little mark showing you've gotten one of them, you've hit one picture. So you keep going for 24 times, and then at the end it'll say ESP present, it'll say better job, good job, it'll say ready for Las Vegas, so that you see how you're doing. And the point is, what I've learned from it is often it's the fleeting thing that's the answer, but we're looking for a mental perfect word or perfect picture or something. And when you do this, you, like I say, in my mind, the flashing one said yellow, but I picked blue.
Yeah.
And the yellow one comes up. And I say to myself, see, I told you, don't pick the blue. You were supposed to do the yellow. So you learn to get the message from yourself with this.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me.
And it's also a fun thing for kids. It's just, and they're beautiful pictures. There's 200 photos of places that Russell specifically selects that are good targets for remote viewing.
That's cool.
So then he said to my husband, and Russell's 86 now, and we just finished this project for him, I want to do one really which could help train remote viewers even better than this particular one. He said, so I'd like to have one where we ask them about two of the properties in the picture. So properties are things like, the things that remote viewing, they ask you is there water in the picture? Do you see mountains? Is there a bridge? Is there trees? And so when you go to this app, which I'll show you what that looks like, that's called, I have to say, I'm doing more promotion for Russell's app than I am for my own podcast. Okay, this is what the app icon looks like. It's this little eye.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, which is the eye from the Third Eye Spies. So that's the app thing, and it's called Stargate ESP. And Stargate is the name of the program that they ran secretly for 20 years, but Russell's son, a lawyer, was able to go to the government, to Washington, D.C., and declassify all the work that they did. Had he not done that, you would not be able to see Third Eye Spies and all of the things that he tells you, because that was all classified information. Wow. So we'll just do one together. So here, I'll tell you what it says, because it's really too hard for you to see on this. Do you think there's grass in this or no grass? It's only 2 questions.
No grass.
Okay, so I'm going to hit no grass. And now another question is going to come up, and it says, do you think there are roads? No roads or roads?
Roads.
Okay. Now 4 photos are going to come up. That's how this differs from the other one. And I don't know, because of the light, it's really hard. There we go. Is that, are you able to see those 4 photos?
Yeah.
So now with those 4 photos, you either instinctively may know, oh, I know which one it is, which may not have anything to do with the properties you picked. Or you may look at it and say, oh, the one that has the properties that has a bridge or has the roads looks like that one. I'll pick that one. So it's up to you which way you feel, if it matches what you think you picked with the roads, or do you want to pick which one you just feel this one might be matching to what it is?
I feel like the mountain in the lower right, I think it would be.
Okay, where it has this one right here?
Yeah.
Okay, oops. Okay, got it back. Okay, so the right one right down there, right? Okay, so I'll click that. And it was this other one.
That's what I first thought.
Hey, so now did you learn something?
Yes, absolutely.
That you should have picked what you first quickly goes without thinking.
I have been told that and shown that so many times, and I still don't do it.
Okay, so here where it says no grass, you got to check or correct for that, because there's no grass in this mountain scene.
Yeah.
When it said, you said it had roads, it doesn't, so you get a little X. And then you didn't match the picture, but on the bottom it scores. If you have a picture match, you get 1 for that. What they're looking most for here is property matches. Then here, these will light up, and the same thing will happen. If you get all the way to over here, they'll call you an oracle. It's I haven't gotten there yet. I keep trying.
Yeah.
I've got useful in Las Vegas, you know?
Yeah.
So before it became available in the App Store, which was, as I said, very recently in the last couple months, we sent it out to some remote viewing groups that study remote viewing. And like Michelle has a group that she teaches remote viewing to. Okay. So they all downloaded the app. It's free right now. So they tested it, did the test drive or whatever you call it that you do before you release. and they were all thrilled with it. So remote viewers who are in working at this and training at it were very satisfied doing this. So now it's been launched out to the public, and I think it's a wonderful tool. So that might help, you or anyone that's trying to do some kind of things like that.
Yeah.
There's also a incredible one called Got PSI, and that's something that Dean Radin had put up online many years ago, and now it's being, like, it has to be reformatted for the newer machines, and run faster and all that. So it hasn't been finished yet, but it does still work, but not as fast as you would expect, like, say, future, apps or things would work. But there they have a remote viewing thing, like different they call them games, and they're games that you play where what's missing, where is the person in the picture. I've played them, and they, at the end, so many, they have gathered, I can't remember if it's millions of data from this, because it's been on for years. I mean, I played this, I think 10 years ago or something. So that's, Got been around a very long time.
Wow.
So that's also free, and you sign up for it and you play these games. And if you achieve a score higher than anyone, they have at the end, what was called the Hall of Fame. And I've made number one twice in the Hall of Fame when
That's
I was playing.
awesome.
I'd take a picture. I was so thrilled.
Yeah.
But mostly people don't even use their name. They just have a kind of they might, they don't want people to know who they are or whatever. But it's another very good place for any of your listeners who are looking to find something that doesn't cost any money, that can help maybe give them experiences of seeing that everybody has psychic abilities, just like everyone can play the piano. You just have different degrees of how well you may be able to do this. Some people, as Dean says, like myself, he says, I'm natural with this. I don't have training that made this that way, really. I had the mind dynamics back then when I used that thing, but that was back then. I haven't used that thing since I was a teenager. So then there are people who are trained, and they do phenomenal. Like Michelle's a trained remote viewer. She's an amazing remote viewer. So it doesn't have to be that you're a natural, and it doesn't have to be that you're a trained. You can be either one.
Yeah.
The point is to allow yourself to say that this, of course I can do this, because you can.
I love that. That's exactly what people need, is that permission, like you said. Like, I give you permission to know that you are psychic, to know that you're a remote viewer, and to know that you have these skills, and then to go start playing with them and figure that out. And those are the coolest apps you could possibly have on your phone, really. Oh. Right?
Russell calls me every now and then with a phone call. That's, okay, Gail, I have something in my hand. I want you to tell me what it is. And the last time we did this about a month ago, I said, oh, it's like a sparkler you hold in your hand where color and lights are all coming out like this. And let's see, do I have the device here? I had the device somewhere. All right, well, I can't show you the second. But what it ended up being, the device, was this colored LED light thing that was shaped just like this, vertical. Yeah. And reds, yellows, blue, all just color, just moving like this, colors, cool. Colors. He said you were 99.9% correct, so I'm sending you one.
I love this.
Right, he'll send you what it was. I wish I had it in front of me to show you, but
positive reinforcement. Give a gift, win a prize, and you want to keep doing it.
So we play fun games like that every now and then, and I say to him, I don't know, maybe it's but so far we have a very good hit rate with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I really want to talk to you about your shamanic initiations and your travels and things you've done with different groups around the world, but we are not going to have enough time for me to really get my fill of that. So I wonder if you'd be willing to come back maybe next month or something to talk about those things.
I think that's a good idea, because it is too involved.
Yeah, and I want to hear deeply about them. So I wonder, but I do want to give time for people to understand, what you do and what you offer and where to find you and all those things. So I know you have some books. I don't know if you want to start talking about those, just at least give us an idea.
You mean I've been in books? I don't have any books that I've written.
You have a small, medium, at large, even if it's not.
Right, but if you have a publisher out there, I'm looking for someone to publish it.
Hey guys, find a publisher.
And not only that, it was Dean and Russell who, after they interviewed me to become a remote viewing subject, that they both took me to the side separately and said, you know, you should write a book. You should write a book. And it's Russell who loves the small, medium, at large title. So that's why we're keeping it, because he grew up in the publishing industry. And I went back home, and it took me 6 months, and I chronologically wrote a book from the beginning of my life to that present day, because I didn't know how to write a book. I didn't go to high school. I don't know how to write a book, right? But I wrote my stories. And what we did is polished 10 of the stories well, actually 9 of the stories that are in the book. One of the other stories is in a published book called The Understanding the Allure of Suicide by Stanley Krippner, who's an incredible psychologist and researcher. And where was I telling you about the book?
In the books that you were in, and Russell Targ.
Oh, right. So they said to go write this book. So I did write the book. But what we did was, I really didn't pursue anyone for the last 15 years to see if I could publish it. But the woman who produced the Woodstock book called me up and said, you know, I'm going to give it, let's make a book proposal, which we did. And it's it's very nice to look at because it's a PowerPoint presentation. And she said, I'm going to take it to some of the people I know in the industry and see if we can get a bite. So she's brought it to one person. I don't know. We're waiting to see if she's going to bite or not. But we're open to any other bites if they're out there.
Yeah.
So I haven't actually actively tried promoting it or anything in all these years. I just kind of shelved it after that. And then one day we found this site called Medium. Do you know about the medium.com?
Yeah.
It's a place where, you know, President Obama writes on it. Everybody has pages, and they write stories, and they share things from their sexual experiences to, you know, their suicides, whatever. They write everything on there.
Yeah.
I wrote 10 pieces. If anyone wants to read them, it's called, you go gailhayssen.medium.com. Those 10 stories will come up, and you'll see my spoon and fork bending story there. I don't know if you can see my fork that I bent at a spoon bending party.
Yeah.
And swirled around.
Wow. That's the most twirly one I've ever seen.
Russell examined it very closely, and he said, yep, that was done correctly.
That's amazing.
So there's that story in it. There's a shaman story. And they're all like 5 or 7 minute reads, and they're polished, and I'm very proud of them because they really are well written. My book needs a lot more work, but I didn't want to do any more until I found some interest to, you know, it's 350 pages I wrote. That's a lot to rewrite again and again. And I've done it a couple times. It's like, if I get an interested person, I'm ready to do whatever they say to shape it whichever way they want me to shape it.
Yeah.
And I really do hope it gets published, actually. It would really be like having a dream come true. I know I can self-publish, but I was really hoping that somebody might really have the interest.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a different experience. Self-publishing is cool and fine, but being published is really, I'm sure, more rewarding in many ways.
Well, I'm not giving up the hope.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Well, you and
me. It was 40 years for the Woodstock photo. I hope this isn't 40 years.
Yeah.
I'll be dead, but, you know.
Well, you and I are similar in one more way, which is that we don't promote our books well enough. So maybe we'll get better at that. But you do have the podcast coming out soon, too, September 1st. So people can search for A Small Medium at Large to find that once it comes out, right?
Yes. And it's going to, I'm working with Michelle, since I don't know anything about this sort of thing. So she's made the plan that every other Wednesday there'll be a podcast. I don't know what time it is. It'll also be on YouTube and Spotify, and they'll be putting it on different sites around. I can tell you who our upcoming guests will be in case that will interest your audience.
Yeah.
Our first one on Wednesday is going to be Dr. Sally Rhinefeather. And she is the daughter of J.B. Rhine, who coined the word or the term ESP.
Oh, wow.
And he's also the foundation of parapsychology, and he brought it to the Rhine University. I mean, it's the Rhine research that they brought to Duke University, and he was part of the Duke University system for many, many years. And the research continues on. They're still on the Duke University campus, but they're not part of the university anymore. But it's called the Rhine Research Center, and people can look this up. But if they watch the show, they'll find out all the information. She's 91 years old, She's as sharp as can be, and her body moves around the room when she had to get a few things, like she's a young woman of 50 or something, I don't know. So there's something about this field that keeps these people young and spry and brilliant. And she'll talk about, growing up in a family where, they were rolling dice and looking at ESP cards back in 1950s and 40s. The next guest after that will be Stanley Krippner, who's the author of the book I was just talking about, Understanding the Allure of Suicide. But he's a very well-known psychologist, and he started the studies of dreams at the Maimonides Center in Brooklyn, in New York, in the 50s. They were hooking people up to electrodes and starting to understand what was going on in the dream process. Wow. He's a brilliant man, the kindest man, just a wonderful person. And he's been involved with the Grateful Dead for all these years. So we have these kind of stories. My stories, I want them to be more intimate and about the person's, I want to know about their parents. I want to know about stuff about how they feel.
Yeah.
So I'm not a I'm not a tech, I'm not asking for scientific information as much as I am more, what does it feel like?
Yeah.
And then the third one will be Russell, and that's my longest interview. We had a great time. And after him will come Dean, and then after him, Stephen Schwartz I have coming up, Deborah Lynn Katz, Nick Cook. Anyway, so these are all people that I've already got in the can, so to speak.
In the hopper, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be fast becoming one of my favorite podcasts, and it's not even here yet. So that's really cool. Like, all those people are so awesome.
I can't wait to find out what time it's going to be.
Yeah. We'll see. Was there anywhere else where you want to direct people to come and interact with you or find more from you, or did we hit them all?
I have an email if anyone has. I used to be Dr. Gail. I actually received a PhD, an honorary PhD from the University in Mongolia in the science department that was given to me. I was floored. I could show you my certificates, but I'm sure you believe me. But before I ever got that, I used to be called Dr. Gail at IONS. Dean had given me this name because I would answer people's emails that had difficult questions. So I just never want someone to feel like they're alone out there in the world, that if they have, I don't need 50 emails with you. I'm happy to do 2 or 3 or whatever. But if you have a person that really needs to reach out for any reason, there are wonderful places to go. But if you haven't found that and you need someone and they want to, they can get me at a small, medium, at large. What's my new email? A small, medium, at large podcast @gmail.com. Or if they saw something on your show and they said, oh, I just want to ask her one question, there's an email. I'm not like somebody that's disappearing into the cyber world after we hang up.
Yeah. Oh, that's really beautiful offer for people to reach out, and the email is small, medium, at large podcast @gmail.com for that. That's very nice of you. And Gail, it's been a pleasure. Are there any final thoughts or nuggets or things you want to say to people before we say goodbye?
Well, I never thought I would be doing what we're doing. I've been on 3 interviews a month now through Michelle, and I'm doing these podcasts. And when everybody said that I should do this, I thought that they were crazy. And when I started to do it, I said, I love this.
This is so fun.
It was so fun. I'm not going to make money. I'm not doing this for money. I'm only liking the connection and the reaching out. And, and it's nice when someone says, I think the first one I was on, they said, she's hilarious. That made me feel so good. I can't tell you. Another one said, I think we should have her at a party.
Yes.
It's so funny. So, if I could reach out that way and somehow I'm reaching, all my family and friends around me, do you think they want to keep hearing another psychic story or something like that happen? I'm sure they're like, oh God, I'm so glad she found a place to put her stories to.
Yeah, seriously.
I just want to say thank you for inviting me, that I really enjoy doing this, and that I'd love to have you on my podcast, and I'd love to come back on yours. And I'm meeting the nicest people at these. And one other thing I'm doing is, when you're on my podcast, you get a jar of jelly and a homemade banana bread. Both are from my house, made from my own eggs, nuts, raisins I made from my grapes. banana nut breads full of all that deliciousness, and then you get some jelly of the month. Right now it's mulberry. Last month it was grape.
I'm sold. That is all. I would have done it for free, but that's just the icing on top. That's
Well,
fantastic.
We did an experiment where when you pray to the chocolate and send good vibes and love to the chocolate and people eat the chocolate, we discovered it does show it elevated the person.
That is
So
true.
I find I always like to infuse my foods with a lot of love, and that hopefully when the person eats it, they receive that feeling. And
Oh.
that's my closing.
I love it. That is beautiful, and everyone out there right now is feeling that. And fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing, and this has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom according to the world shaman, Gail Hayssen. Gail, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight.
Thank you.
Well, travels come on all levels. Bodily travels take us around the world. Mental travels take us forward and backward in time and manifest our reality. Emotional travels take us inward to unlock the energy flow from within. And spiritual travels take us beyond this dimension and bring back gifts we could have never imagined until we went traveling to find them. Wherever you're traveling, however you're traveling, and whichever of your 4 bodies you are using to do the traveling, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
Domestic terrorists.
They're not wearing masks.
Domestic terrorists. It's that basic, it's that simple.
And the question is, how are we going to really almost deprogram these people?
These extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians.
They're not wearing masks.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories. We'll sensitize them to what we have to do.
Potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
We've made it our mission to limit the spread of this disease and to limit the risks to lives and to our economy. We've been clear from the beginning that getting together in groups outside of your household that is not permitted is not allowed.
And we need to make it clear to them that the vaccine is the ticket back to pre-pandemic life. And the window to do that is really narrowing.
This nation, this idea called America, was and always will be a new world. Our new world.
Today we're taking steps to confront not just the gun crisis, but what is actually a public health crisis.
They're not wearing masks.
You know the old expression about snitches? Well, in this case, snitches get rewards. We want to thank you for turning folks in and making sure we are all safe.
Are you proposing taking away their guns, and how will this work? I am. I'ma have a love lamp in my